Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rude Horror Podcast live edition. I'm here with Director Addison Binek. He's been on the show multiple times. He's the director of Psycho Ape and the Roast Masterpiece Theater. And then also his newest film that we're going to talk about today, Magnum Opus, the movie. And we'll also talk about the horror genre as well, just because Magnum Opus isn't really a horror
No,
film,
no. But
but
it's another project that I've made, and I just appreciate being allowed to talk about it on a platform that because it is so niche. I have to kind of work a little harder than I would to advertise it or talk about it than I would for Psycho Ape or something like that.
right. Well, I think especially a lot of like guys our age, we grew up watching like CKY,
Mhm.
Jackass. So this is the type of film that would kind of fall in that category where, uh, MTV would say, "Don't try this at home." Well, when MTV and other you know uh, video places like that make these types of films, basically it's saying go try this at home because no one listened to labels at all. I think that kind of made kids want to do these types of films even more.
Right. I mean, it's that I think it's human nature where it's don't do that. That's dangerous, and that it entices us to do it even more. You know,
Right.
plus the fact that you know the sort of glamorization of this kind of dangerous activity. It was on television, and it looked fun. So when you have access to home video cameras, I did, and when you have a group of like-minded friends who enjoy this stuff and want to give it a shot, I mean, our stunts and stuff are not nearly as dangerous as some of the stuff that you see in CKY or Jackass. But I mean, we were still heavily influenced and wanted to, do our own version. But of course, some of this footage is very old. It's from the early to mid 2000s. And at the
Hmm.
time, it's not like we had any editing software or anything like that. I mean, we weren't really filming this stuff with any sort of real purpose. It was more just documenting our hangouts. And, cut to 20 years later, I finally, digitized everything and cut it all together into, an hour long compilation. But 20 years ago, I couldn't predict the future. I didn't know. We were just filming stuff for, the fun of it. To make ourselves laugh when we plugged the camera into the television later. I mean, that was really the only reason we were doing it. We just sort of were collecting footage for our own amusement, not for any sort of, you know, final piece or anything like that. And it was just, let's do this, let's do that, let's do this idea, let's film this hidden camera thing, let's jump off this, and so over the years we just sort of amassed hours of footage, and I finally spent last summer putting it all in chronological order to the best of my ability. So it starts off in the year like 2002 on crummy VHS, and then it goes to like 2005, 2007 on mini DV, and then it goes to well, actually no, 2005 is like high eight, so it's a step up from VHS, but it's still very grainy. And then it goes to mini
Hmm.
DV from like 2006, 2007 till about 2012, and then from 2013 on, it's all digital. So not only does the quality of the footage get better as the movie progresses, but you also watch us age from 12 years old in 2002 to our late 20s by the time the movie is over. Because we basically kind of stopped recording this kind of stuff around like 2017. That's kind of, people started to get married, and we just sort of, that was kind of the end of it. We didn't
Right.
really, you know, at a certain point, we just kind of, that was it. We just stopped filming that kind of material. And so it's just this, 63-minute long compilation of stunts, pranks, and skits, over the course of 15 years that were all documented on various different formats. And so I took all that footage and I cut it together in chronological order. And so, I think it's an interesting viewing experience because stuff like this doesn't, I mean, a Jackass movie, they film that over the course of like 6 months or a year, and then they release it. So it's really only a bubble, it's only a time capsule of like when they shot the movie. But this is 15 years of footage, cut together into one long thing, and there's various different formats in that hour. So that's what I think kind of makes it unique and interesting is, yeah, it's stunts, yeah, it's pranks, yeah, it's kids being stupid, but you also watch us grow. And I think that's kind of the unique hook. Like someone in a review called it Boyhood Meets Jackass. And I wish I had thought of that because I would have put that on a poster.
Right. Yeah, yeah, that's a really good way of putting what this movie's about because yeah, like this is kind of like almost like a documentary in a way rather than just like
Mm,
a
yeah,
comedy reality show type of thing. Um, it's kind of like a story of a group of friends in
right.
Michigan growing up in a
Yeah,
way.
that's exactly what it is. And um, like I chose not to have any new footage of us sort of like reflecting back on those old times or anything because I didn't want to turn it into like a documentary with a narrative or anything like that. I just kind of wanted to present the footage because I think it just speaks for itself. And so as you're watching it, I didn't want to like hold anybody's hand and be like, well, this was 2006, this was 2012. I feel like you can kind of figure it out, like maybe not exactly what year it is, but you can definitely tell when the footage gets better, when the quality gets better. It's like, okay, well, now we're getting into modern technology.
Right.
It starts off crummy VHS, you can kind of tell, like, well, that must have been like 20 years ago. It had to have been. And I think if you're, savvy enough with technology and filmmaking, and you can see in the background of our bedrooms, our teenage bedrooms, you can see posters for like the Dark Knight and stuff. So you can kind of figure out what year it is. It's 2008.
Right.
It couldn't be any other year because that's when the Dark Knight came out. So it had to have been 2008. And so this was our high school, this is when we, were 16, 17, and you can see, you can see how old we are. And then there's like, a scene where we're at a house party, so you can figure out like, okay, well, we're 21, we're 22 at this point. So
Right.
you kind of, it also, um I don't know. I preferred rather to just leave the footage alone and present it as is than to sort of explain what was going on, because whenever you kind of over explain something, I think it kind of takes away some of the allure or some of the mystery or some of the um, you know, I don't know. I don't like over explaining things. And so
Right.
I chose not to film interviews. I chose not to have any narration. I just wanted to present the clips as is because I thought that was kind of just more fun that way.
No, I totally understand. Yeah, because sometimes like if you just over explain, then it kind of takes away the I wouldn't say like the magic of the movie, but like sometimes less is better than too much.
Well, some people, when you allow them to use sort of like their imagination or their artistic opinion, or I don't know, when you sort of like give the audience the opportunity to sort of, you know, judge it on their own merits or to, experience it themselves, um, I think that's better rather than me sitting down in front of a camera and being like, here's the time we pushed, a friend in a shopping cart into a wall. Like, you don't need to explain what that is. It speaks for itself. Or, here's this one time when I was 16 and my friend, stapled the webbing of my hand. Like, you don't need to explain what that is. It speaks for itself. So,
Right.
that's why I just sort of just left it alone. The footage is what it is.
Right. And how painful was that to staple your hand? Because I don't think I've ever actually stapled my hand.
Uh, the initial stapling for the webbing did not hurt because there's really no like nerve endings, in this area, and so it was just
Uh-huh.
kind of stapling. It was more just stapling flesh, and I didn't feel it at all going in. But getting it out was the tough part because
Oh,
as you can
yeah.
see in the footage, I had a pair of tweezers and trying to pry the closed prongs open. That was the tough part because first of all, my adrenaline is going nuts. So my hands are shaking from the initial shock of everything. So, I have this pair of tweezers and it keeps, slipping on the metal prongs. I can't get a good grip because my hand is shaking and both hands are shaking. And that
Right.
was the tough part, was getting the staple out. Going through, no problem. Getting it out because it closed, that sucked. Um, and that was just because when we filmed it in 2006, that was when Jackass #2 came out, and I had just watched again, rewatched Jackass the movie, and one of my favorite gnarly stunts in Jackass the movie is the paper cuts. When they're all
Ooh.
sitting around and giving each other paper cuts with a manila envelope. And so I
Yeah.
saw that and I was like, I want to do a stunt like that. I don't want to repeat what they've already done, so let's not do paper cuts. What's the next gnarliest thing that you can do to like the webbing of your finger? Like, okay, let's get a stapler. And so that was my idea, and I thought, like, let's do it. And
Right.
again, it wasn't because we were making any sort of movie or anything. We weren't, putting together a film. It was just more like, well, let's get footage of that. Let's just film that for our own amusement. And we did. And so now, 15, 16 years later, it exists, in a film, on Blu-ray that people can watch. And it's like that was half my life ago.
Right. And like the whole time that you and your friends are filming these clips over the years, you probably never imagined that, years later, 15 years later, that you would take all that footage and compile it into a movie.
I no, yeah, I had no idea. It was more just because I wanted to try something different. Plus, like last summer, I was home, just stuck at home for a long period of time because first I had gotten shingles in my eye. And so like half my face
Mm.
was covered in basically like chicken pox looking bumps. It was terrible and painful. So I was home for like a full month just in pain and on, painkillers and all kinds, eye drops and stuff. That sucked so bad.
Mhm.
And so I wasn't working. I was just trapped at
I
home. And
bet.
then as soon as I was getting better from that, I caught COVID. So it was another month of isolation and being stuck at home. So when you're stuck at home for 2 months straight from illnesses, like first of all, like my mental health wasn't very good. I was feeling very down. And so I was like, I need to bide my time doing something productive, but I didn't have anything productive to work on. So I was like, I'm going to take all that old footage, I'm going to cut it into something just to keep myself busy and to maybe have like a new project to put out. So I spent, some time just sort of compiling all this footage and cutting it in order the best of my ability, try to remember what happened when and sort of gauge our ages, how we looked. And so it's in order, and so
Mhm.
that was just something that I wanted to do, something to, spend my time doing. And so then I finally was like, all right, well, I'm gonna put this on Blu-ray now. And now it exists because um I like I like trying different things. I like having different kinds of projects because, I've been doing like movie ripping stuff for like 10 years. So it started out with, movies to watch on a rainy afternoon, which was like a 10 to 15 or a 15 to 20 minute long like movie review riffing show, like Mystery Science Theater or Riff Tracks. And then I did a feature length, movie riffing show with Masterpiece Theater. and that was with trauma movies. And so then I did Psycho Ape, and now it's Magnum Opus. So it's movie riffing. Psycho Ape is a slasher comedy spoof, and here's Magnum Opus, which is sort of a Jackass style documentary. And so I haven't just kind of done one specific kind of thing. I want to try different things so that I'm not sort of thought of as like, oh, that's the guy that's made like that's all that guy does. Like that's
Right.
all that's just
Not
what he
shoehorned into one
Yeah,
type of genre.
exactly. Like I don't want to be stuck in one specific genre. I mean, I know a lot of people like Psycho Ape and everything, and that's great, but I just don't want to just be known for that one thing. You know what I mean? Like, I want to try
Right.
different kinds of stuff. Like, I don't, because I mean, there's different kinds of stuff that I enjoy. I don't just love horror movies. I love comedies and Jackass and ripping stuff in addition to Trauma and Full Moon and low budget horror. But I like a whole variety of different things, and so I kind of want to try to do a whole variety of different things.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, you're a fan of film in general, so
Right. It's not just. I mean, a
yeah,
lot of people I think get stuck um, just doing the one specific thing because they do that like two or three times, and so then they're just kind of stuck. Like John Carpenter is primarily known as a horror filmmaker, but if you watch stuff like Escape from New York, it's basically a western. Or if you watch like like Rob Zombie's career, he's tried numerous times to break out of that mold. He had some success with like House of a Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects and Halloween, but then he could never get like his Groucho Marx biopic made, or he wanted to do a hockey movie, but he could never get the funding for it. And it's because he had so much success early on with horror that studios won't let him do anything else. So and same thing with George Romero. All people ever wanted were zombie movies, and he had more stories to tell. But every
right.
time he tried to make a new movie that wasn't a zombie film, studios just weren't interested. And so, not that I'm anything like any of those guys, but I try to think of I don't want to make like seven Psycho Apes and just people think that I just don't want to be stuck in like, that's just the Psycho Ape guy. I just
Right,
I don't want that. I like the
right.
movie is successful. I like the movie's popular. I just booked a screening of the film, but I'm doing a double feature with Magnum Opus to show that I have range, like I can try different things. Um, just to sort of show that like I'm willing to attempt other kinds of projects.
For sure. What would be like, what would be some other projects that you would like to venture to? Like, would you like to venture into like romance or action films or
Maybe not necessarily romance, but action film would be tough. It would require some kind of budget. I mean,
yeah,
I still do love the horror genre, but I would like to try something else that like maybe isn't necessarily a straight up like spoof of a bunch of different stuff. Like, we kind of
yeah,
already did that with Psycho Ape, where it's like a slasher comedy spoof with, Mel Brooks style parody scenes and things like that. So it would, I think, be fun to maybe try something else that like isn't that, where it's maybe more of a straightforward kind of slasher, or maybe something that's a little bit more comedic, but not necessarily over the top and in your face. Like, look how dumb this is. You know what I mean? Like more just
right,
because there's comedic slasher films that aren't necessarily outright spoofs. Like I like movies like Friday the 13th Part 6 or something. Where that's not a spoof, but it's still like it's easily the funniest sequel in the entire franchise. And so
right,
I like stuff like that too, where it's just the characters are funny. Even like Friday the 13th Part 5 is very, very funny. The characters are funny because you got like Ethel and Junior, they're bickering, they're back and forth. I enjoy stuff like
right.
that. And I enjoy stuff like, like Quentin Tarantino is one of my favorite filmmakers, and he has this ability to make um, he smashes all genres into like one movie. Like you
Oh
watch,
yeah.
Django Unchained, and on one hand, it is this sort of like black exploitation slave movie, but it's also a western. And so
Yeah.
it's, there's multiple things going on in it, and I just sort of enjoy that kind of thing, where it's not just one genre. It's multiple things going on. Or like Kill Bill is also like a spaghetti western mixed with, martial arts, kung fu, samurai stuff. There's multiple things going on under one roof.
Right. Yeah, and I think, I mean, yeah, Quentin Tarantino would be a perfect example of like bending multiple
Mhm.
genres into one film. Even From Dusk Till Dawn,
Right, exactly.
the first half of the movie is kind of played off like a serious kind of like these serial killers are trying to cross the border, and so they don't get caught, and then all of a sudden they stop at the titty twister, and then
Mhm.
all of a sudden
Now it's a
things start
vampire
go
movie.
yeah, then turns into a vampire movie. uh I like movies like that where
Yeah.
uh those twists that you don't really see coming sometimes just make the movie a lot more entertaining than you would expect.
Well, yeah, you think you're going along for the ride for, a certain story, and then halfway through you're given something else. Like I like that. I like the element of surprise. I like
Yeah.
where you think the movie is one thing and then it ends up being another. Like, Quentin's very good at that, where, Death Proof is like one of my favorite movies where, it's two distinct halves. The first half is kind of a stalker slasher where,
Yeah.
it's this group of women being stalked by stuntman Mike, and then 50 minutes in, this group of characters who you think you're going to follow the entire feature are, smashed to pieces halfway through the movie, and so you're like, well, what's the second half of the movie going to be? Our central cast is gone; they're dead.
Yeah.
And then the second half is a whole new set of characters, a whole new bunch of women. And now instead of a stalker slasher movie, we're doing a car chase action film where they turn the tables and they're chasing him. And now it's this big, action extravaganza, which so there's two totally different genres in that movie too. It's tethered together by stuntman Mike being in both halves, but the difference is that, you got the slasher movie in the first half, and then the second half is like a 70s, you know, car chase movie. And so I like stuff like that. I think it's really fun and I think it's really interesting.
And how about that long scene of I think the actress's name is Zoe, and
Mm,
she's an actual stunt woman, but man, strapped to the hood of that car by like a belt.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, you know,
Crazy.
and I mean, they had to have been going really fast. I don't know what the speed was, but I mean, you
I think
could
it was like
definitely
100
tell.
miles an hour or something like that. I mean, it was something extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, just something like ridiculous that really pushed the boundaries of these high speed, adrenaline rushing, car chases.
Yeah.
And like that's stuff that like you would see maybe like Jackie Chan do, or I mean, I don't know, man. Like I think she kind of pushed the boundaries on like what stunt people can do, because that was just insane to me.
Yeah. Because I mean, just speaking about like stunt people and stuff like that. I mean, um, obviously Magnum Opus is an homage to, Jackass and CKY and stuff, but Johnny Knoxville is like one of my favorite like actors slash stunt people because he made a movie a couple of years ago called Action Point, and like not a lot of people saw it because it was more of a narrative, but there were stunts in the movie, and he got wrecked doing that stuff. I mean, like I don't know if you saw that movie, but you
Yeah,
know
actually, I haven't seen that
no,
one.
that's okay. That's okay. Not a lot of people did. It had a very limited release, and then it just kind of disappeared from theaters because it didn't make very much money. But it's basically your typical like '80s like summer camp movie where it's based on a real water park that was known for no rules and reckless behavior, and basically the employees were just teenagers who are, high on drugs, supposed to be watching these children, and they're going down like dangerous water slides and crashing into each other. And the water park was basically falling apart because it was being, it wasn't being, kept up to standards and stuff. So, Johnny Knoxville went and like made a movie about this place. And so he does stunts in the film that, in my opinion, kind of rival anything that he did in Jackass. And it's a shame that those stunts were, like, I don't want to say wasted on this movie because they're very good stunts, but it's like a lot of people haven't seen the movie. So, like, you haven't seen it, for example. But
Right.
if you're a fan of Jackass, Knoxville, he breaks his face in this movie. There's a scene where he goes down this slide and he
Mm.
flies off, the edge of the slide, and he hits the ground, face first, and he shattered like his cheekbone and stuff. And
Ooh.
so, but he didn't know that he had done that. And I guess, later on, because Chris Pontius is in the movie too, and they were hanging out later, and Chris did something that made Knoxville laugh, and so he chuckled, and his eye like popped out of his socket, and he had to use the palm of his hand to like push his eye back in because the bone underneath his eye socket was just shattered, and he didn't know. He had no idea because there was no pain or anything. But it was when
Oh
he
my god.
laughed, it popped out, and so he had to pop back in. And so he had to wear an eye patch for a while and had to watch himself. He couldn't sneeze because his eye would pop out again. And so, you know,
Yikes.
yeah, this is some of my favorite stuff. Is like, that guy is gnarly. That guy's insane. Um, and the stunts in this movie are like crazy. There's a scene where he's like standing on top of another water slide, and they blast him down the slide with a fire hose, and he just his legs just go completely out from under him, and he just goes flying down this water slide, you know. But so
Man.
this movie is kind of an example of like the stunts are great. He really put himself out there, but because I think the stunts were wrapped up in a narrative film, an '80s style summer camp movie, it didn't really work. People didn't. I don't think people understood that, like, this is sort of like Meatballs or something like that, but with like
Yeah.
real actual stunts from Johnny Knoxville in the film. Um, but it's worth watching at least once just to see those stunts. And there's another scene where he's in a catapult, and the thing just gets cranked backwards and flings him through a barn. And I mean, he literally goes flying through the wood, and the
Ooh.
thing breaks apart and splinters, and he's stuck halfway in a wooden barn. And these are real stunts that he did for the film,
Wow.
and
Wow. I
he got messed up.
Man, yeah, I'm definitely have to watch the film now. I've been like, looking through, like scrolling through films or whatever, and like I always see that movie
Mhm.
and like
Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna see this movie one day, and I never sit down and watch it, but now I'm
Yeah,
definitely gonna have to.
it's sort of it's a movie, it's a comedy, it has a story, it has a plot, it's based on real events. This was a real park, but I think probably what hurt the film was the fact that they didn't really advertise it or promote it correctly. Like, this is an '80s summer camp movie with Johnny Knoxville doing real crazy stunts and really getting hurt because now after, Jackass Forever, I mean, I guess it remains to be seen whether or not he's actually going to continue doing Jackass stuff. But I know that he was injured so badly on Jackass Forever that he's basically, you're gonna retire from at least the bigger, wilder stunts, like no more bull hits or anything like that. But Action Point is sort of a good thing to watch because it's like, well, here's some bonus stunts that weren't done for Jackass, but they were filmed for this movie. And if you only want to see the crazy stunts, you can skip to those parts. There's some dingers in that one, and so the Jackass fan in you will enjoy that. I mean, I
Yeah.
did. And so,
Right.
if Jackass Forever is kind of the last big stunt thing that Johnny Knoxville does end up doing, like at least we have Action Point to kind of, go back on and be like, well, here's a couple more big ones, that in all honesty should have been done for a Jackass film, but he did it for this movie instead.
For sure. So basically, Action Point has been sort of overlooked by people, and more people need to check out Action Point.
I think so. Well, if you're a fan of Jackass and if you're a fan of, Meatballs and, those kinds of, let's save the park movies, that were kind of
Right.
done to death in the 80s. I mean, this is exactly what that is.
For sure. Yeah. I wanted to mention earlier when we were talking about Magnum Opus. Someone in the comments had mentioned like over explaining can bore the audience,
I
and
think so too.
yeah,
I mean, I think that when you spend too much time, again, I try not to say that like, oh, this is some great big art piece or anything like that. I mean, I'm just proud of it because it's nostalgic for me. But you know, I like movies by David Lynch, Harmony Korine, where they're strange. They're strange art pieces, and these are guys who they don't really do like director's commentaries. They don't explain what their art is, and I kind of like that. Like David Lynch notoriously like will not do interviews about Eraserhead. He'll never explain what that movie's about. Um, and I think that that's kind of cool. I mean, I also like documentary filmmakers like Werner Herzog, who he'll make something, and sometimes it is what it is. You watch it, and he doesn't really come back to talk about it or explain like what he was trying to like say or do. And so I kind of just think that that's cool. Like a couple years ago, I watched a movie by Harmony Korine, who it was called Trash Humpers, and it's literally just like him and a group of friends, actors and actresses, wearing old man makeup, like you would see in a Jackass movie, and they're going around like causing havoc, setting things on fire, destroying TVs and cars and humping garbage cans and stuff. There's really no story. It's just people dressed as old people, destroying things and just being general like nuisances, to society. And his sort of marketing strategy was like, I think at first, because the movie was shot on tape in like 2009, I think he wanted to initially produce a whole bunch of unlabeled VHS tapes and just sort of leave them places for people to kind of discover. And I mean, he ended up not doing that because one, he didn't know how many people still had VCRs, and two, um, there was no like FBI warning or anything at the beginning. Like he didn't copyright the film for the tape, so that means like if anybody like found the tape, they could then um, copyright it and claim it as their own. So
yeah,
he didn't want to do that. He didn't want to risk other people claiming ownership over the film. So, but that was kind of the idea. That was kind of the marketing strategy. And I like that. I think that that's cool because imagine just finding some random VHS tape unlabeled. You pop it in, and it's just you don't know that it's not old people. It looks like old people, but it's really Harmony and like other actors dressed as old people doing crazy fucked up shit. And like I like that. I think that that's kind of interesting and cool because there's no context whatsoever. You're watching this thing that's just crazy ass footage, and you're like, what the hell is this? And so I
right.
kind of wanted to take that not the same like idea, but the spirit of here's out of context stunts from children imitating Jackass. Does it need explanation? Does it need a story? I say no. Like that's what
Right.
I personally would love to go around and leave unlabeled VHS tapes of Magnum Opus lying around because I think that would be funny. But
Right.
again, same thing. I don't. No one owns a VCR anymore. Like only like hardcore, VHS collectors have VCRs anymore. And even then, um, where would you just leave random tapes? I have no idea. For something like, where would you leave tapes where people actually like find it and like
Right.
take it home with them? I don't know.
Pawn shops, thrift stores are
Yeah,
about the
because
only.
it's not like because in 2009 there were at least still some video stores open. Now it's even less.
Yeah. Yeah, the market even for like VHS tapes has gone down tremendously over the past couple years.
Yeah.
Um,
So, it's sort
yeah,
of
it
just,
just sucks.
it's not how it used to be. I mean, it's a cool idea, it's a cool concept, but I don't think it would work. I don't think anybody would give a crap if they found some unlabeled tape. Um, but, so I think it's kind of neat that this 20-year-old footage is now, digitized and, on Blu-ray. Like
Yeah.
that's crazy to me is to have this footage, on Blu-ray. And I just I made a post today that it was announced that my double feature of Psycho Ape and Magnum Opus is going to be happening at the end of March, at a movie theater in Mount Pleasant, Michigan, which is like a 2-hour drive for me. But I think it'll be fun to see like Magnum Opus in a movie theater because it's like that's the last place where like Magnum Opus belongs. But I'm willing to spend the money to host a screening to see if anybody will come because um, a lot of this footage had never been seen by human eyes other than like my group of friends. And here I am about to go to a movie theater to project this footage onto a giant screen, and it's like that's exciting to me, and I hope people come. But um, you
Right.
know, it's
Yeah, it's
just
really
the
cool, man.
experience, of like here's me half my life ago, doing this stupid stuff with my friends, and some of those people, they're no longer with us. They've passed away, and so this is what I have of them, immortalized in a film forever. Like yeah, it's
Yeah,
stunts, it's skits, it's pranks, but it's also nostalgic for me because these are my home movies. This is my group of friends, and I just kind of hope that like our antics, make other people laugh. And what I've kind of discovered is even though um, a lot of people who are watching the film for the first time, they don't know me or my friends, but they've done similar things. Like their childhood was stunts and pranks and antics, but the only difference is that they didn't film it. So they sort of relive their childhood or relive their teenage years vicariously through our footage. So it's sort of nostalgic for them to watch us doing similar things.
for sure, man. Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, like me, for example, I mean, I got tons of footage of me doing similar stuff. Like I sort of made my own Jackass movie um when I was like 14, 15. And who knows? I mean, I might try to well, the thing is uh my camera had broke at a party uh I don't know, 2009. So I still have probably about 12 high tape or high 8 tapes laying
Mhm.
around that I don't even have a camera that works to try to save those.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and I mean, I could probably take it to somewhere and get them developed. But the thing is even like videotaping parties and stuff, it's like I don't know what's all on those cameras, and I really
Right,
don't want
right.
to, um, because there's some stuff that we're underage. at the
Yeah,
time,
there could
we
be, yeah,
there could be
some
stuff that's
illegal
probably
activities. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, like we didn't do anything too crazy, but maybe some things where it's like, kind of scratch your head, like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have. We didn't think about recording that at the time. That
right.
years
Yeah,
later, playing back that,
'cause, yeah, in
because
Magnum
like,
Opus, we had the scene where it's a house party, and a buddy of mine takes a spray of mace to the face, and that was one of the things that happened at one of our house parties one time, and it just happened to be documented. And so I threw that in Magnum Opus of the agonizing pain he goes through trying to wash his eyes out with milk. And so I can only imagine what could have possibly been documented at somebody else's house party.
right, like I'll tell a story. I'm not gonna say any names, but and this was 2009, so yeah, we were probably like 18, 19. We were of age, um, but I'm not like, I mean, we're underage drinking though, so that's one of the things where I can't show that to the public or whatever. But there's one party where one of our friends had passed out on the floor, and one of my other friends thought it'd be hilarious if we dumped lighter fluid on his
Oh man.
his pubes and light it on fire. Crazy idea. I
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
that's
suggest
crazy. No,
I don't
no.
suggest anyone to do that, but at the time we were young and dumb, and so I grabbed my camera and filmed it. We thought it was hilarious. He didn't wake up. We had a towel and tried to, put the fire out. We had like a good couple second laugh, but it's like, all right, this is serious, like we
Yeah, that's
can't.
insane.
Yeah. So he ended up fine. I mean, he didn't really get, there's no like third-degree burns or anything. It was like a quick couple second fire, then we put it out. But crazy shit like that, I can't really just. I don't know if I could put that in the movie, but
Yeah, that's sort of
insane
that's
shit like that.
bordering. That's borderline. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, just yeah. I mean, we were over 18, and nothing really got shown. None his
Well,
downstairs region didn't really get shown, but you
less
kind of seen.
less that, more lighting someone on fire on camera against their will. I think that's sort of you're straddling the line of you know something very illegal there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, we were young and dumb, did a lot of stupid shit. So, you know, it would be cool though to just try to go through a lot of that footage and just see like what there is there that can be
Yeah, I mean
shown.
that's the
Because I mean,
fun
I think
part
we did do a
is
lot of
going
stuff
through.
that can be shown.
Right.
Uh,
'Cause, yeah, the risky factor of like digitizing footage is always like, you can drop this stuff off somewhere and then they digitize it for you. Um, well, you never know if you're going to get it back. You don't know what kind of condition your original tapes are going to be returned to you. Luckily, like a friend of mine had digitized some of this stuff a long time ago because we still had the original VHS tapes. And he had this, um, I don't even know what it was. It was like a VCR that he could also plug into his computer, and he could play the tapes in real time, and the computer like digitized it as the VCR was rolling. And so we kind of got lucky in that he had already done that like 10 years ago. And then some of the other stuff, it was a little bit easier to digitize just because we still have like mini DV cameras and stuff like that that can be used through um, like like modern Macs don't have FireWire really anymore. So you have to get adapters, but you can still find those adapters at Best Buy and stuff. So it's just a matter of plugging the FireWire into an adapter into your Mac and running it that way. But we still had a working camera. I don't know what you would have to do. You might have to look through eBay and find a high eight camera, functioning high eight camera, in order to digitize it that way. Um, It can be
Yeah,
done though. It's just you gotta do a little bit of research and find what cables work for your computer.
right. Well, and like I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, like I ended up buying another high camera on eBay, but um for some reason the camera was like a PAL camera. So it was like a
Oh,
camera from a
yeah,
different
right. Yeah,
country.
different country.
And just my luck, I bought a camera for like I don't know how much it was at the time, like $60. Didn't say that in the description, so
Yeah, I
bought the
gotcha.
camera and the tapes. Son of a gun! Like I was like, well, that money's wasted. But I could record tapes on there, which I was almost going to like. I think I maybe recorded a couple minutes, but I'm like, I don't know one's tape, so like I would hate to record over something that I probably shouldn't record over.
No,
So
don't do
hopefully I
that
didn't
because
like ruin some.
once you do that, the footage is lost forever. You can't go backwards. I wouldn't. Yes, I wouldn't
Right.
recommend doing
So
that. You maybe get a
I hope I
blank
didn't
tape,
record over
so you can
something good.
find. Right. Yeah. Well, if it was only a few
But
seconds, then maybe it's not so bad. Um, but yeah,
yeah,
maybe look into eBay and trying to find an actual like, high eight camera that you could use that would play your old tapes and you could digitize it that way because I mean after a while those tapes are gonna disintegrate. You know what I mean? Like tape doesn't last forever. Stuff starts to get moldy, stuff starts to get old. I mean, that was something that we were kind of discovering as we were going through some of our old tapes was that some of them, the ones that really weren't kept in the best condition, um, digitizing some of that footage, we could see like some, you know, less than high quality footage. And we were like, oh man, we can't really use that because it looks like shit. So we didn't.
yeah,
And because these tapes are 15, 16 years old and they were all stored in drawers and stuff, not in the best condition, not even in like the little plastic cases. These were just loose tapes. So dust got in there, they were exposed to the elements. And so some of these tapes just, they're not in the best shape anymore. And so I think it is
yeah.
best to digitize, what you can now because you run the risk of losing that stuff forever.
Right. And I think it's important too for like even the audience. Like if you ever film stuff over the years, like when you were a kid or teenager or whatever, and even if you did similar stuff like this, where you did jackass stunts or you did like skits or hangouts with your friends, like did try to digitize them sooner than later because, yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, you could
you
risk
run the
losing
risk
it.
of losing that footage forever. I think
Yeah,
also part of what's kind of fun and interesting with footage like this is it's a time capsule of a certain era. If you're of a certain age in the mid 2000s, where you know kids today might not find it as captivating or interesting or nostalgic because you know everything is streamed streaming instantly to Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all this stuff is digital.
yeah,
Um 15, 16 years ago, it was grab that high 8 or mini DV camera or VHS camera from the closet and let's just start rolling, and it wasn't being streamed anywhere. No one was seeing it instantly. It wasn't accessible unless took it to someone's house and plugged in the camera and hit play and had it play on their television. So it's just kind of this old school way of um, sharing viral videos. This was how it was done 15, 16 years ago. You actually had to, with a physical thing, pop it into a VCR or, like I
yeah,
said, bring your camera to someone's house with the cables and plug it in. You couldn't just text someone a link to a funny YouTube video or something or a TikTok video. You had to make the effort to, because I mean, There's a scene in Magnum Opus where I'm dressed as Superman and I roller skate off the roof of my buddy's garage and I landed right on my ass. And I thought like I broke my tailbone because that hurt like a motherfucker. Um,
Ooh.
but it was because on take one, I landed on my feet and I was like, well, we can't use that. I didn't get hurt. So I got to do it again. And so I roller skate off the roof of his house and try to make it look like I'm flying. I'm Superman. But I landed right on my ass. And so the very next day, we took that footage to school. And I snuck down to the school library and I popped that tape into the VCR. And the school library has like 6 or 7 TVs kind of spaced throughout the school library. And I didn't realize that it was going to be beaming on every television. I thought it was just going to be playing on the one that like where the VCR was. And because I was showing a group of friends and like other classmates, like, hey man, check this out. We did this yesterday. Um, and unbeknownst to me, it's broadcasting on like 7 different televisions throughout the school library of me dressed as Superman jumping off the roof and landing on my ass and really hurting myself. And so then, of course, the school librarian comes up and hits eject as fast as possible. Like, what is this? But that was how this kind of stuff was done in 2005, Um, and, that's just how we shared funny home movies because we didn't have somewhere to upload the footage to instantly. And I think a lot of people relate to that. We all grew up in this era of like that was what it was, swapping tapes, keeping
Yeah.
keeping like underground tapes like circulating and stuff and sharing stuff that way. So that was kind of how that was all done.
Right. Yeah, the technology wasn't as good as it is now. Like, our cell phones back then, I remember we had to in order to text somebody, it was like a chore. Like
Oh
to
yeah,
get
yeah.
to the S button, you had to tap the 7 like 6 times or
Right.
whatever.
So yeah, sending some long paragraph or something, like responding to someone, you had to keep clicking on the damn buttons because it would go from because if you want to get to like the third letter or something on the number on your cell phone, you had to click because it went from like it was like STU, on a number 8. And if you want to get you have to click it 4 times because it was like 8 and then S, then T, and then
Yeah.
finally U. So it was like, man, texting back then sucked. You didn't want
Yeah.
to text.
Well, that's where we had to shorten abbreviate things. Like
Oh yeah,
instead of
yeah.
like, be right back, you'd actually put the letter
BRB
B and
or
yeah.
G2G forgot to go.
Yeah, I mean,
That
that's
was where that all
that's where
came
that all
from.
came from, really.
So people today have no excuse for not being able to, communicate through paragraphs. I mean, now there's talk to text, and people still just text the word K. Like that's it when they want to talk. Like, and it's like how
Yeah.
rude, like send me an actual message. Send me something like talk to me. Let's have a conversation.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so I think because this footage exists in that sort of time capsule, it's of an era of you know the way that it was filmed was so in its own bubble that I think that's part of the fun of watching it too. Is like this is just kids messing around a long time ago with you know VHS video cameras, and it's not like today where you could just upload it to YouTube same day that you
Right.
shot it. This isn't like that at all.
Yeah, or broadcasting live and then instantaneously being able to
Yeah,
watch. Um, but yeah, like, back then, yeah, we didn't have phones or a lot of things to entertain us. We had to make our own entertainment. And when you get your group of friends together, I mean, it's kind of hard not to try to make something that's entertaining and hilarious. And
yeah,
you want to
yeah.
be able to show people like, hey, check out what we did over the weekend or, you
'Cause,
know,
yeah, I mean, I didn't have any editing software in high school. You know, the best of my ability was like I had two VCRs, you know, stacked on top of each other, and you could edit that way, but it was very crude, and you had to get your timing just right, or else you would have to go backwards and start all over again. Because you know, I would record stuff off television, and then I would go back and make like a copy of that tape, but I would, you know, cut out the commercials and stuff. And so you would have like a blank tape in one and your like original master tape in the other one. And so you could like, you know, record what you had already taped and then you hit stop when like the commercial starts, and then you hit record again so it picks up right where, you know,
Right.
the show or movie started playing again. So like I could edit stuff that way, but it was so, you know, it wasn't good quality, so we never really edited any of that footage that way, and so this stuff has just been kind of sitting around for a long time, you know, not really edited in any way, just sort of raw. And so, kind of going through and cutting this stuff into little skits with music and stuff, that was really just fun for me. And I hope people enjoy it. I mean, it seems that most people like it, even if they don't think like every stunt or skit is like, you know, hilarious or great or anything like that. I just tried to make, you know, a fun, like sort of hour long, it's a trip down memory lane for me, but I also hope that it's like entertaining for other people to watch because some of the stuff is pretty stupid, really silly. Um, but I also tried to make some bits, you know, shocking. Like I think there's a couple in there that are pretty crazy, like the stapling of the webbing. When my one friend shoots water up another guy's nose, you know, with a giant syringe, and it
Yeah.
all comes out of his mouth. Like that was crazy to film. You know, we didn't know what was going to happen. It was like a science experiment. And so then his eyes get all watery, and he's like coughing up like bloody mucus. That shit was crazy to film. Like
Ooh.
I'm filming that, and you can hear in the background me sort of like gagging and stuff because it was gross. Um, but that's,
Right.
you know, and then at the end, when the girl eats the potato chip covered in Myrtle Beach sand, um,
Ooh. Yeah.
that to me probably is like the most shocking, nasty thing in Magnum Opus. And I know it's gotten a strong reaction from a lot of people that have seen it. Um, and so that's why I wanted to make a like a toy out of it. You know, like I thought that it was fun to make a toy out of like the Magnum Opus chip. You know, like you can have a collectible. I think it's kind of fun.
Right.
Um, and you know that was filmed like 10 years ago. You know, so that's not new footage. We didn't do this last week. This was in 2013, like April or May 2013. We went to Myrtle Beach. Like I filmed that with a, you know, a HD digital camera like that. That was my vacation. And so now it's in a movie, and it grosses a lot of people out, and it's what I consider like, you know, one of our showstopper moments because any Jackass movie has, you know, a big moment that, you know, that is memorable to the film, like with Jackass #2 when Chris Pontius like drinks the horse semen, or
Oh.
in Jackass 3.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, that's far more disgusting. Or like in Jackass 3, the Poo-Kano and Dave England, you know, his butt is painted to look like a volcano, and they give him an enema, and he just launches crap all over the place. Like every Jackass movie has a big showstopper moment. It's the thing that's like,
Yeah.
this is the craziest thing in the movie. This is the grossest thing in the movie. Um, and so I wanted to have a couple doozies in Magnum Opus, and in my opinion, I think it's the staple. I think it's the water in the nose, and I think it's the chip. I think those are the three like most crazy bits in the film.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are definitely the moments in the film where people are going to react to those scenes. Like there's no way around it. Like I mean,
Yeah,
you know, just the idea of eating a
Myrtle
sand
Beach
covered
sand.
chip, like, you know, there's so
And
many
that
things that run through my mind. Like man, like how could you like you can't chew it, you know, I mean,
No.
you're gonna break your teeth, so I don't know how the hell she was able to
Yeah, and if you
actually
look,
chew
I
on
mean,
that.
the shot is quick, but if you look at like the ground, if you look at the sand, like when she's scooping up the chip, I mean, it's dirty, dirty beach sand. There's like a cigarette butt a couple inches away. There's little like
Ooh,
sand bugs and stuff. It's not clean. That is not clean beach sand,
right.
And like I said, we were just on vacation with a group of friends, and we were bored that afternoon. I was like, "Hey, I have my camera. Um, let's go film this real quick. That would be crazy." And so we did. And again, that footage has just kind of been sitting around as like home movies, and now it exists in a film, as a big stunt moment, a big, scene where um, I filmed that at the time, and it didn't. I just thought it was funny at the time, but now watching it 10 years removed, now it grosses me out to no end. Like, I had a tough time even editing that scene, and I was like, holy shit, how can something that I filmed 10 years ago that didn't gross me out back then gross me out now? That makes no sense. Um but I don't know, now it does. And so I was thinking, like, wow, if that grosses me out and I filmed it, how, I'm very curious to see what kind of reaction it's going to have, in a theater with people. I
Oh,
haven't
yeah,
seen the film like projected to a crowd yet. I have no idea. I think like that's one of the bits I'm kind of really looking forward to watching with an audience. So I hope they show up because I want to gross them out.
for sure. Um, d do you know, like, did she ever get sick from eating that? Or, like, what was, like, the aftermath of.
The aftermath was she was fine. I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
we went out drinking that night. We went to a bar.
So the
No,
alcohol killed
yeah,
all the
germs.
bacteria and
Yeah, no,
germs.
no repercussions as far as I know. It was actually, I mean, I forgot about this moment too. This one happens a lot quicker, so I don't know if it's as gross to people. But then she later on in the movie, at the very end, um, eats dog food. She takes a scoop of the Alpo with a spoon and eats a spoonful of Alpo dog food.
Ooh,
Um, and that's a pretty gross moment too, but I don't know if it's as gross as the sand. But it's still, it's chronological order, so I wanted to keep it that way, whether or not like one is grosser than the other. Um, but I still just wanted to keep it in chronological order, regardless.
yeah.
But I know the Alpo, gave her some pretty bad diarrhea. I know that's true. She texted me
Wow.
later that night and was like, "I regret eating the dog food."
Isn't that something? She can get sick from eating the dog food, but
Yeah,
eating
not the
nasty
sand.
Myrtle Beach sand, totally fine.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't explain it. And then I don't say in the film, like I should have maybe put some text in there or something to say what the like whose wedding it was, but it was her wedding. At the end of the movie, where I am, the flower boy. Um, I don't know the full story, but I know that initially they had like a flower girl, like a real flower girl planned. It was going to be the daughter, the little girl of like a friend of theirs, and she was going to, come along and put petals down and everything. But she got sick or couldn't make it. Like the family couldn't make it, so they didn't have a flower girl. So as a joke, I said, "I'll be the flower boy. If you have a bag of flour, I'll eat from it with a spoon as I walk down the aisle." And I was joking, but then when I showed up to the wedding, lo and behold, she had bought a bag of flour and got me a big wooden spoon and was like, "Here you go. Put your money where your mouth is." I ate the sand. I ate the dog food. Now it's your turn to do something crazy. And so I was like,
Ah,
wow, this is no competition. I mean, this is I'm getting off easy. This is just flour, whatever. At least this is food. Like sand isn't food. You're not supposed to eat dog food. So flour is no problem. So that's why I'm eating the flower at her wedding, and no one there except for like the bridesmaids and the groomsmen were in on it. So her family, his family, they had no clue that I was going to be walking down the aisle eating flour in front of everybody. So everybody's reaction is 100% genuine. It was a prank sort of on them.
Right.
And that footage only just recently got unearthed. Like she got married in 2017 or 2018, and that was always just raw footage in their wedding video. So when I told her I was cutting together, Magnum Opus, I was going to use her sand footage and her dog food footage. She was like, "Oh, I can get you that flower footage if you want it." And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure, definitely send it to me." So she, uploaded it to the internet, and I downloaded it, and it was already pretty much just cut. So I just added some music and stuck it in, and it's like, "Oh, sweet, this is kind of a cool like bookend to the film where again you see all of us as 12-year-old children jumping off of playgrounds and crap to an hour later, now we're 27, 28, and a member of our group is getting married and we're adults, but yet we're still doing stupid stuff like eating flour at somebody's wedding, just to kind of
Right.
show like how tight we all still are after all these years. And that is like the sharpest, most HD footage in the movie because it was filmed by a professional wedding photographer, and he had no idea that I was going to do that either. So you can hear him in the background, like making jokes, saying like, "Oh, I bet that was tasty." That's legitimately like his reaction because he didn't know. No one knew. He didn't tell anybody.
Right. Yeah, and like how cool is that to like, at like a ceremony for a wedding, and then just seeing like all of the bride and groomsmen's family just reacting to like what is going on? Like, is this planned or
Yeah, I mean,
just
they didn't know. Most of them didn't even know who I was, just because like you know I'm I'm her friend. Like I've known her for a long time, but I don't necessarily know her family. I definitely didn't know his. So you know, I'm just some strange guy eating flour walking down the aisle, and I will probably never see most of those people ever again. So I'm just sort of this blip, this weird memory to them of like, oh yeah, that one guy ate flour at your guy's wedding. Like, who was that again? And again, so now it's immortalized, in a film on Blu-ray.
right? Moments like that just kind of makes you think like, don't take life so seriously sometimes. Like just
Yeah,
there has to be like that self or not self relief, but like just some of those like I don't know tension breaker moments where you have to take a laugh sometimes at just the
right. I
small
mean,
things in
a
life.
wedding is a serious thing. It's emotional. It's a big deal for everybody involved. But because our friendship had been built on, antics and making each other laugh, it felt right at home to, do some kind of crazy stunts at her wedding. It fit right in, and now it's in a movie, and like that's part of the fun is like people buying the film are watching a piece of someone's real life that was a real moment that was really her wedding, and they're still married. She just gave birth to her third child, and
Oh wow.
so that's a real chunk of someone's life in a movie. That's part of their wedding video, and here it is in this compilation of people being stapled, people eating gross stuff, but then here's like something kind of real, you know what I mean?
Right. Kind of like a happy ending in a way where
Yeah, yeah. Happily ever after.
yeah. Well, the film is going to be showing at Wasteland Cinema, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. It recently just got announced that it's going to be playing at Cinema Wasteland in Strongsville, Ohio. I think it's going to be playing on the Saturday, which would be April 1st, because it goes March 31st to April 2nd, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And like that's my favorite convention. I've been to Horror Hound, I've been to Days of the Dead, but there's something about Cinema Wasteland that's very uh, homemade. It's very like tailored to the independent filmmaker rather than Horror Hound or Days of the Dead, where that's more for like if you want to get autographs or selfies with big names, like Nev Campbell or Christina Ricci or the cast of The Walking Dead or the cast of Stranger Things. That's kind of where you go to get autographs with those people. Or more recently, Terrifier 2. Like that cast and crew have been going to all kinds of Horror Hounds and Days of the Dead and stuff. And so that's kind of where you go to get autographs and selfies and all kinds of merchandise, for those guys. But
Hmm.
Cinema Wasteland is more like here's a celebration of independent filmmaking, horror and otherwise. Um, they do hire or they do book guests, but they're from like obscure movies. Like that's what's kind of part of the fun of Cinema Wasteland is you end up meeting people you never thought you'd meet. Like people from John Waters movies or people from old vintage. There's like Motel Hell stuff from the 70s and 80s that would never get booked for Days of the Dead or Horror Hound because maybe they're a little too obscure. The films are forgotten at this point because like they're not on 4K or anything like that. So
Yeah.
Cinema Wasteland is this cool melting pot of like yes, you can come and meet these celebrities, but the vendor room is like all independent filmmakers. So you could leave a Cinema Wasteland having purchased a new movie from an up and coming struggling independent filmmaker, just sort of either starting out or trying to get some attention. Like, that's where I started. Like I started at Cinema Wasteland selling Masterpiece Theater at the Troma booth and stuff like that. Um,
Yeah.
and so, you can buy like 15 movies from 15 independent filmmakers. Whereas if you go to Horror Hound or Days of the Dead, they tuck us in the way back and you have no idea we're even there. And even by the time you get to us, you've already spent all your money on your selfies with, the Terrifier 2 cast because they'll charge like $60 for an autograph or a selfie or something. So you don't have any more money to spend. And so by the time you walk past, my booth, like, hey man, you want to buy a movie for
Right.
$10? You don't have any more cash. You're tapped. And so Cinema Wasteland is this cool thing where um it's very independent filmmaker friendly, and that's why it's my favorite. Plus, the entire weekend they just screen movies. There's two different or three different screening rooms, and so one room is for like 60 millimeter prints of like horror movies. One room is for DVDs, and so there's like independent films getting their Wasteland premiere that weekend. Like Psycho 8 played there 2 years ago. Masterpiece Theater episode 1 played there like 3 or 4 years ago. So
Mm.
it's cool that you can submit your stuff, and the guy who runs the thing, he's not sort of biased. He doesn't just play what he thinks is like great or what he likes. He'll take any submissions from any independent filmmakers and just play it. So you can go to a Cinema Wasteland and you can walk around, you can talk to vendors, you can meet celebrities, you can buy movies from people, but then you can go check out a couple films because they play back to back to back to back.
Mm.
And, that's kind of fun. That's cool. So, with Horror Hound or Days of the Dead, they're very picky. They'll only play stuff that's like new. They'll only play stuff if it's like, shot in like 4K, digital HD. They rejected Psycho 8 because we shot that on tape, even though it was a new movie. It was just they saw
Yeah.
tape and they were like, nah, forget it, hell no. Um,
Wow.
that's just how things go these days. You have to fit a
Yeah.
certain aesthetic or they're not interested. People flipping through movies, if they see something that's like shot on tape or something, they may not be they'll just turn it off because it doesn't work for their aesthetic. They don't like it. So with like Days of the Dead or Horror Hound, I've tried submitting Psycho Wave to them before, but because it's shot on tape, they think like, no one's going to be interested in this. But with Cinema Wasteland, it's like, send us anything. We'll play anything. And so I thought like, part of the coolness of Magnum Opus, like in my opinion, is the fact that it's shot on 4 different formats over the course of 63 minutes. So it's like 10 to 15 minutes of VHS, 10 to 15 minutes of high 8, 10 to 15 minutes of mini DV, and then 10 to 15 minutes of like digital HD. And so you're seeing 4 different formats in one movie. You know, people don't do that. That's crazy. You wouldn't see a feature film shot in 4 different formats. And so I kind of hope that people pick up on that, like when they see the movie, that they're watching something that starts off as like, crappy, crummy VHS and then grows into like, wow, this is like eye popping, you know sharp, crazy, you know but I thought like
Right.
if anywhere is going to show this, if anywhere is going to take a shot with this, it's going to be Cinema Wasteland. Like, it has to be, because it is not a horror movie, and I don't know where else to send it to, because I only know of horror conventions. um so I thought, like,
Yeah.
if I'm going to send it anywhere, it's got to be Wasteland, and they picked it. So I'm really excited about that.
Heck yeah, man. That's awesome, dude. Um, yeah, like this movie, it's like such like a tight niche type of, I don't know, like I don't know what genre you would consider, but like
I don't know either. It's documentary, comedy. Um, I don't know. It's experimental. It's just it's
yeah.
my experiment. That's just how kind of I categorize it. This is my experiment. Um, Psycho Ape is popular. Tremasterpiece Theater was popular. I want to take kind of a risk now and do something that might not sell a ton of copies, but I still want to give it a shot. And even still, it's sold like 85 or 86 Blu-rays. So,
Oh wow,
that's
man.
that's
That's a
still
lot.
pretty good. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's not 100, but we're close. We're damn close.
Well, by the time you had the movie show at Cinema Wasteland, you kind of give the film more of a bigger push. Um, if you have more screenings,
Yeah, I think by the
you'll
end of
you'll
the
definitely
month,
make over
we'll
100.
probably surpass 100. I'm hoping, because I have my screening here in Michigan, the double feature of Psycho Ape and Magnum Opus. That's March 25th. And then Cinema Wasteland is literally the following weekend. So I'm kind of thinking, like, that's 2 screenings of Magnum Opus back to back, one weekend after the next, one in Michigan, one in Ohio. We're bound to sell like 15 more copies. Like, it would suck if we didn't, but there's a very big possibility that we could. 2 screenings, like, we could sell some. I hope, if people show up, if people come watch the movie, and I'll be happy once we cross like the 100 Blu-ray mark, and I'll be like, yes, because you set a certain goal as a filmmaker. You want to sell, and it's not for the money, and it's not that at all. It's more just that accomplishment of like, wow, 100 people have seen the movie, cool. Because it's not going to end up on Amazon Prime, and it's not going to end up on Tubi. So the only way to really see it is to buy a Blu-ray. This isn't the kind of thing that's going to be available for streaming, because it is so niche, because it is so weird. You have to sort of just get a copy from me, and I have to sort of do a good job promoting it so that people know about it and people order a copy. Because, like I said, Tubi's not going to take it. Amazon Prime is not going to take it. It's too raw. It's too niche. How are they going to market this? How are they going to sell this? This isn't like your typical movie. So this is sort of my thing that I have to just sort of pimp out the best of my ability.
For sure. This film is like for the die-hard Addison Binek
It,
fans.
it really is. And I don't know how many people like really exist that way, but we've got 85 sales. So it's like, okay, there's 85 of you guys who will buy you know whatever I put out, which is cool. You know what I mean? And
Right.
I'm not gonna look at that as like, oh, I can just release anything. It's not that. It's more just like, that's pretty cool. You're willing to take a shot with whatever I make. And it could be the allure of a Jackass thing, you know. And even still, like Jackass is a niche market, and Tom Green and CKY. I mean, that's a small audience to begin with. And
Yeah.
so now I'm trying to cater to like those people too. So it's not the same. Like with Psycho Ape, I can sell that or market that to trauma fans and people who like slasher movies or like guerrilla films. So there's different ways to market that. But this is like, here's my home movies of me and my friends acting like idiots when we were teenagers. You know, either you're interested in that or you're not. It's very black. It's black and white with that one. There's
Yeah.
no like middle ground there. It's either you like it, that kind of stuff, or you don't.
Yeah. And, there's I think that, there is an audience out there that, you know, if they've already seen every Jackass episode and movie or CKY or Wild Boys or something and they want more.
Right. This is
Um,
my attempt. This is my attempt at doing something like that. And this is the best of my ability. I tried to mimic the style the best I could because Jackass is like my favorite thing in the world. When Jackass Forever came out last year, I went and saw it like 4 or 5 times in the theater, because I was so happy that it's like, we get another one. Are you serious? Like, it's been 12
right.
years between movies. Um,
That's crazy, man.
so I wanted to soak it up as much as possible. It's my favorite style of comedy. It's my favorite kind of art because, yeah, it is people getting hit in the balls and getting injured and doing gross stuff, but it's also like hilarious to me. It's just this crazy, you know, weird art that's like, you can't categorize it. It's just, it's its own entity, and there's nothing else like it. And because it's been so long between films, like, who knows if we're ever going to get another one. Knoxville got so rocked during the last one that it's like, if we do get another one, he might not even be in it, or he'll just be like
Yeah.
off to the side as a host or something. So I just,
Which I
because of,
mean, he's
yeah,
paid his dues, man.
yeah, he's paid his dues.
So,
He's broken so
you
many
know,
things and had so many concussions that it's like, yeah, he's paid his dues. It's fine. I'll miss him if he decides to take a break. But because he's my favorite Jackass cast member. Him and Steve-O.
right. Yeah, and I mean Chris Pontius, I always thought he's hilarious. I mean, a lot of the
Yeah,
cast is funny, but those
and
are
I like
kind of
I enjoy
the staples
everybody.
of the
Yeah,
yeah.
but there's just something about like Knoxville doesn't give a fuck. He's just gonna stand there and let a bull flip him in the air like crazy. Um,
Right.
he's just gonna allow all this horrible, horrible stuff to happen to him just because it's footage. Let's get footage for the movie. I'm willing to
Right.
do that. And it's like, man, that guy is insane. And then
It's
Steve-O does all the nasty, gross out stuff that like, no one should do. Or the stuff that's like could be extremely long-term damaging, like getting a leech to suck his eyeball, and stuff like that. I mean, that shit
yeah,
is insane.
right. And it's all for just those moments of did you get that on camera? Or,
Yeah.
like let's make sure that I'm gonna do something crazy and you better make sure the camera's rolling. Because that's
Yeah.
all that mattered, like in those moments.
There's actually a couple things that I wish had gotten filmed for Magnum Opus, but we didn't have a camera, and we were just doing it just because. Like when I was like 15, 16, a friend of mine dared me to jump out of a moving car, and I did, and I broke my arm, but it wasn't even
Ooh,
filmed. So this is like a memory that only exists between this group of friends, because we didn't have a camera with us at the time. And it's like, man, that was the gnarliest thing I've ever done and the stupidest thing I've ever done. That was one I regretted doing. But I thought I could do it. I thought that I could just jump out and be fine. But like I hit the ground so hard that when my arm like came down, it hit the ground, it hit the concrete so hard that it broke my wrist.
Oh
And
man.
so I had a cast for a little while, and everybody at school was, calling me Evil Knievel and shit like that. And I was like, man, I've done all this other stuff, the stapling, jumping off the roof dressed as Superman. That's me in the play structure on the trampoline that gets pushed off the side and does like a flip and like I fall out and stuff. I had done all that crazy shit. And it's like, and you're telling me the thing that actually broke my arm wasn't filmed? Like, that sucks. So that's like one of my one regrets
Right.
is having done that, but like it wasn't documented, like that's kind of a bummer.
Yeah. And
That would have been
I
in the
mean,
movie.
shit.
That would totally have been in the movie. But it just, it was not recorded.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's times where I think everyone's kind of gone through that was into like filming stuff like this, where it's like a lot of the best moments that happen
Yeah, it
are
happened
never
after.
catch or
Yeah.
yeah, are never caught on camera.
It's when the camera got turned off that like something even crazier happened, and so then they didn't get it. Um,
Right.
but yeah, that was just like one afternoon we were driving home and someone was just like, "Hey man, wouldn't it be funny if you jumped out of the car?" And I was like, "You know what? It would be funny if I jumped out of the car." And so I did, and it just I thought I'd be
Oh,
okay. I had sort of this sixth sense by that point where I was like, I walked away from all this other stuff kind of just fine, like up until that point, I hadn't gotten like severely injured doing like any of this crap. But that was the one that like broke my arm, and they told me then an ambulance showed up because my
oh man.
neighbors my neighbors saw me fall out of this car. They thought my friends pushed me out of the car, and they called the police because they were like, I guess this kid was thrown from a moving car, and then the car drove away. So I think he's really hurt. And so when I answered the door, there was like an ambulance and police in my driveway. And they were like, "Your neighbor said you were thrown from a car. Are you okay?" And like my hand was like doing this because it was broken. My nerves were all shot. My hand was doing this. And I was like, "No, I don't think I am okay, to be
Oh
honest with
man.
you." And so they took me to the hospital,
Holy man.
and I hit my head too. So I had some like swelling like at the top of my head, and they were asking me questions, and I realized I didn't even like remember the hospital ride from like my house to the hospital, and they were like, "Oh, you have a concussion." So um I
Oh
yeah, that was the craziest, stupidest thing I've ever done in my life, and it wasn't even filmed, But that's
man.
sort of like the Magnum Opus that wasn't, you know what I mean?
Right.
Or the Magnum Opus
For
skit that
sure.
didn't get documented. And after that, stunts like that kind of calmed down. I didn't really do stuff like that anymore because I didn't want to break another bone or have another concussion or anything.
Man, I guess like to maybe like tie in the horror things for this podcast as we kind of tone down towards the end of the episode. Psycho Ape. You've talked about how you kind of want to try different things instead of just
Mhm.
Psycho Ape, but in like the past year or so, you've also kind of teased that maybe there could be a Psycho Ape 2. Um, is there any updates on if that's going to be possible or?
That's okay. Um, First, I want to do the Frankenstein movie I have the prompts for that. I have everything, ready to go for that, basically like a script and all my props. That's just a matter of actually filming it. Like I wanted to do it last year, but then I got sick with shingles and COVID. So now this summer is kind of like the tentative. Maybe I could finally shoot that this summer. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so then I'll be able to move on to other stuff once that Frankenstein thing is finished. But I'm not really thinking of any other projects beyond the Frankenstein thing. You know what I mean? I don't want to get too
Right.
far.
For
It's
sure, man.
one project at a time.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, man. So, you know, do you, or you probably don't have like a website or anything. So like people probably have to like directly contact you if they want copies of Magnum Opus or
Well, it's on eBay. I have an eBay listing for Magnum Opus Blu-rays. But yeah, I'm all, I've got Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and stuff. So, I post a link all the time. And I'm always kind of talking about, the projects that I've made. So,
right.
you could check out the link, look for the link, or yeah, message me and I can hook you up.
For sure. All right, man. Well, is there anything else you want to plug in before we close the show?
Well, I should have grabbed some before we started, but I forgot to. But I've got Psycho Whip toys and stuff now. I don't know if you've seen those. They're very limited. They're bloody bananas and like regular bananas, and then I made the Magnum Opus chip and a toy based on like the Magnum Opus like front cover, the wagon. Because there's a scene in the movie where my buddy is riding in a little red wagon down my driveway, and he
Hmm.
totally bails on the wagon before getting to the street, and he falls and hurts himself and stuff. So I wanted to make little toys out of key moments in the film that like meant something to me. So the little red wagon and the chip, and these bloody and clean Psycho 8 bananas and stuff. It's just kind of a fun new thing for collectors. Like if you like the movie, then maybe you'd like a little toy to go on your shelf with the Blu-ray or something. So those are available too.
For sure, man. Well, Addison, man, wish I had more time, but
No,
I
I get
seem to
it,
be a
man.
little,
I get
I
it.
seem to be a little pressed for time.
It's cool.
Um, but yeah, man, thanks for coming on here and talking about Magnum Opus and um, other films. I know this isn't really like a horror genre episode, but you made horror films in the past, and
Yeah, I mean there is there's a little bit of bloodshed in Magnum Opus. There is real blood. There's a scene where uh I grabbed onto the back of my buddy's car while he was driving, and I'm wearing roller skates, and I fell and scraped my knee really bad. So, you know, there is legitimate blood in the movie, so that's horrific. That's my one sort of
right,
horror thing. There is real human blood in the scraped knee.
for sure, man. Well, Addison, man, it's been fun talking, and thanks for coming on the show again. We'll have to we'll have to do another podcast in the future, I'm sure.
For sure, man. Definitely.
All right.
See
Well,
you.
everybody, thank you for listening and watching the episode of the Root Horror Podcast. I'll link Addison's eBay in the description of this episode. So if you want to check out Magnum Opus the movie or Psycho Ape or the Magnum Opus and Psycho Ape toys, if they're still available, those links will be available. And for all other links for the Root Horror Podcast, you can go to linktree.com/Root Horror Podcast. And she's got a putty knife. I don't know. It looked like a knife, but it's not really a
Yeah,
sharp
yeah, it
knife.
looks dull.
So, yeah, for all those links, just go to linktree.com/Root Horror Podcast.